When it comes to coercing foreign investors away from Xinjiang, America is playing fast and furious. Thousands of vehicles manufactured by Volkswagen or Volkswagen, including Porsche, Bentley and Audi, have been impounded in U.S. ports, reportedly over a Chinese-made component which may have come from Xinjiang in West China. In an official statement, the German carmaker says it's working to rectify a delay in delivering certain vehicles as it replaces the component. The automaker also said that it would discuss, quote-unquote, the future direction of its business in the region. This despite an audit carried out last year, commissioned by the company, which found no sign of forced labor at its Xinjiang site. In the wake of lies about forced labor being committed there, the U.S. enacted a so-called Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act in June 2022 that bans imports from the region unless it can be proved otherwise. Why is America so fast and furious in punishing businesses operating in Xinjiang? Can such roadblocks achieve their intended purpose? What specifically is the U.S. trying to achieve here by acting based on unproven allegations? I'm pleased to be joined in the studio by Victor Gao, Chair Professor at Suzhou University, and from Pittsburgh, the U.S., by Anthony Moretti, Associate Professor at Robert Morris University. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. Very quickly, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi gave his response to a related question during the Munich Security Conference. Let's take a quick listen.
Using forced labor as an excuse to blame China is essentially aiming to take the jobs away from the Uyghur people and make their products unsellable. Is it in line with human dignity? Is it in line with humanitarianism? Is this really safeguarding human rights?
So as I said earlier, the company is investigating into the matter and they are in discussion with relevant authorities on the future direction of their operations in Xinjiang. Victor, this could mean that Volkswagen or other foreign businesses that are in similar situation could be forced to close their factory in Xinjiang, which have been feeding not just the Han workers, but also the Uyghur population. Is that a promotion of the human rights of Uyghur people in Xinjiang?
Well, first of all, the human rights record for the Uyghur people and for people of every other ethnic background in Xinjiang is very obvious. And it is only those who pretend that they do not want to see that they want to indulge in their fantasies about the things which actually do not exist in Xinjiang. Therefore, I think what the US government is doing is anti-Uyghur people to start with, because it's making their livelihood even more difficult, even making their employment, job opportunities more difficult for them. Therefore, we need to see and tell the world what exactly is happening. And for these major companies, they have very strong legal and compliance department. They will check every law, every regulation upside down, downside up, for example. They want to leave no stone unturned in order to really be very compliant in terms of the laws and regulations. Therefore, this news really was shocking to start with, and also it revealed the complete lack of confidence on the part of the US government, because what they are doing is not making US great again. What they are doing is revealing their sense of inferiority and their sense of vulnerability, for example, in their own way, and they want to weaponize and demonize all these things, even have no mercy for the automakers from their allied countries, and using such brutal acts against them to disrupt normal trade between countries.
There's a saying, it is dangerous to be America's enemy, it is fatal to be America's allies, and I think it's probably proving its worth here. Professor Moretti, I want to ask you, because that act is in many people's eyes outrageous, because the United States is literally saying what must not happen in some other country using its domestic means and based on allegations that have yet to be proven credible, solid. What if another country just enacts a law and says, okay, because there's racial discrimination in the United States, we're going to ban imports from the United States that have a slightest suspicion that involve workers of color? How about that?
I agree. You know, there is certainly a series of questions that need to be asked in terms of what is the real motivation here, and I don't think there's really any secret, and that is that the U.S. would like to see, and Germany is certainly in line with this, Volkswagen essentially remove itself from the Chinese market entirely. And there is this tension that exists consistently between the aims of the political establishment and the aims of the business establishment, as it exists quite often in Western countries. And what essentially Volkswagen is saying at this point is, look, we surrender. And you're absolutely right. If any other organization or any other country tried to create a law such as the one that is on the books in the U.S., the U.S. would look at it and essentially say, we don't care. But of course, if the U.S. does it, then therefore, in the eyes of the Americans, it has to be right.
Yeah, that is unfortunate because the United States has been the champion of a fair competition, of free trade, of level playground, of proven innocent until guilty. And here you have a classical case of guilty until proven innocent. Let's remind our viewers that under this act, Victor, everything that's produced in Xinjiang, cotton, tomatoes, any solar panels produced in Xinjiang are banned unless people can prove that it has not involved so-called forced labor. And by the way, Volkswagen had that audit last year, which says that it doesn't. But in this case, there's no use to argue because there is no reason that is to be had on the U.S. side, Victor.
Well, while such act and its consequences will make it very hard and very harsh for people and producers in Xinjiang, what I'm concerned about is that this act will really turn the presumption of the rule of law and the due process in the United States upside down. And this will be eventually dealing a heavy blow to what the United States has been built upon, and eventually it will cause more harm to the United States as a government, to the people in the United States, and all to the trading partners of the United States, be it allied countries or otherwise.
Yeah. What about Professor Moretti? Because the United States has been saying we want to compete with China, we want to cooperate with China. On what basis are they competing here? They're possibly competing for investment, competing for markets, but on what rules? Is this what the United States mean by competition? If that is how they are going to compete, this is going to be very unfair.
The narrative essentially has been written, and we see it time and time and time again. And that is that let's be partners under our rules. Let's agree to more trade under our rules. And again, if you take this and flip that coin onto the other side, and if China or any country were to say to the U.S., let's trade under our rules, the U.S. would essentially laugh and say, no, it's not going to be that way. The reality that is difficult for the West to accept is that this notion of the U.S. and the West being the dominant players on the global scene, which was the case basically for the second half of the 20th century, doesn't exist any longer. Yeah. China and Asia provide another polar where organizations and countries can gravitate.
Definitely, the latest numbers are showing that the U.S. attempt to smear Xinjiang or to bend Xinjiang is not working, because last year the trade in and out of Xinjiang jumped by 45%. That's the largest jump in the entirety of China, and especially its trade with the 5 Central Asian countries. Its exports to these 5 Central Asian countries jumped by 23%. Victor, is the U.S. barking on the wrong tree and, making itself the laughingstock?
Well, first of all, the United States is indeed barking on the wrong tree to start with. On the other hand, I think there are decision makers in the United States who probably thought that they are God or they are the overlord, and whatever they want to do will be accomplished, and whatever they even wish will be achieved. The reality is just the opposite. The United States is not a god. The United States is not the overlord. And no matter how they try, Xinjiang will always be part of the Chinese territory. No matter how they try, there are altogether about 200 countries in the world, the majority of which will not care about such U.S. act, and they want to deal with Xinjiang as it is. And this will eventually prove that the U.S. acts against Xinjiang and denying the rights of the Uyghur people will eventually fail.
And Volkswagen is very unlikely, I would say, to pull their business out of China. It will be an idiot to do that, however hard the U.S. tries. Anyway, we have to leave it there. Victor Gao, thank you very much, and Anthony Moretti joining us from the United States. Thank you very much. And with that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. On behalf of the whole team, thank you for joining us. You've got the point.